When sociologists research social structure, they look at the different characteristics that make up that particular society. Sociologists would agree that most modern societies are very complex, and Emil Durkheim, Ferdinand Tonnies, and Gerhard Lenski developed different models, or prototypes if you will, of ways to contrast modern society with simpler societies. We're going to look at these chronologically, with Durkheim first, Tonnies second, and then Lenski third. Durkheim said that in order for a society to progress, it would have to have what he termed a division of labor. He argued that social structure depends on this division of labor in society. So in other words, structure depends on how tasks are performed. For example, the task of providing food can be much less complex in a mechanical society rather than an organic society. Mechanical solidarity is a very simplistic type of society where there's a minimal division of labor. Collective consciousness develops, and this emphasizes group solidarity. So, for example, in this type of society, we wouldn't really need to ask the question, well, what do you do? Because everybody really does the same kind of thing. Everybody's engaged in the day-to-day tasks that it takes to live in that particular society. In this type of society, there's really not a lot of concentration on the individual. The concentration now is more on the collective. And because there's very little division of labor or specialization among people, there are very few social roles. So basically everybody has the same kind of role in society. Everybody does the same kinds of things in mechanical solidarity situations. Organic solidarity refers to a more complex type of social structure. Organic solidarity refers to people needing each other. So this is the type of society where you no longer do every task for yourself. Now you have to rely on other people to do tasks for you. So I talked about making bread earlier. In a mechanical society, every household knows how to make and prepares their own bread. There's no need for a baker because you know how much flour to use, and you know how much water, and you know how to raise the yeast, and you know how to knead the bread, and you know how to cook the bread, and you do that for yourself. In an organic situation, you don't make your own bread, and in fact it takes a lot of steps for you to get that bread. So in an organic society, you go to work and you earn a paycheck, and the paycheck gets direct deposited into the bank, and the bank gives you a debit card, and you go to the grocery store and you use the debit card that was supplied to you by the banker. The banker has his needs met by your employer, and you purchase bread that was made by a baker that you don't even know with a debit card that's supplied by the banker who gets the money from your employer. So there's a very complex chain of custody, if you will, that has to happen in order for you to get the bread. So the difference for Durkheim between less advanced and more advanced societies is this division of labor. The more complex a society becomes, the more divisions of labor there are. People become specialists in their roles. And as they become specialists, we have to be more dependent on each other. And that dependence that we have on each other is kind of like the glue that holds society together in Durkheim's view. This is a theory, of course, the theory of the division of labor, and it does hold water for many, many societies. In fact, I can't think of any off the top of my head where it doesn't hold water, but it's just one theorist's view. Another theorist would be Tonnies. Ferdinand Tonnies was German, and he came up with an idea that also looks at the difference between less developed and more developed societies, and he called this division, this difference, Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft, and these are both German words. Gemeinschaft means small communities where people have similar backgrounds and similar life experiences. This should sound to you like Durkheim's mechanical solidarity. Tonnies also talked about then Gesellschaft, the other type of community. This is a large community where people are strangers. They feel like they have very little in common with each other, and with other community residents. This is the more complex society, and this would be similar to Durkheim's organic solidarity. So for Tonnies, Gemeinschaft was very typical of rural life or agricultural life. These were small communities where everyone knows each other. All the social interactions are very intimate and very comforting and familiar. You call these people kinfolk. You may not be blood related to all of them, but you have very strong ties to your community, and there's a very strong sense of togetherness among the members of the community. People relate to each other in personal ways, even if they're having an interaction, say, for example, with the clerk at the local five and dime. It's still a very personal interaction. This is the type of situation, unfortunately, where your neighbors may know way too much about your personal life. Social controls in Gemeinschaft types of communities are maintained through pressures such as persuasiveness. The moral gauntlet will be thrown down, and you'll be expected to behave a certain way because the standards and the morals of the community say that you should behave that way. Sometimes gossip is used as a social control, and oftentimes gestures will be used as a social control. And these techniques work really, really well in the Gemeinschaft type of community because people care what the other people in the community think about them. The contrast to that, in a Gesellschaft type of community, the characteristics there are sort of more like a modern urban lifestyle where you may not know any of the people who live around you. You may live in a large apartment complex and not really be friendly with any of your neighbors. You don't really feel like you maybe have much in common with them. Relationships here are governed by social roles that grow out of tasks, such as I have to purchase a product, so therefore I have to establish a relationship with the person who has the product. There's very little consensus type of governing going on in a Gesellschaft type of community. And in a Gesellschaft type of community, self-interest is oftentimes paramount. It's often primary. And so social control in these types of communities doesn't rest on informal controls such as gossip or facial expressions or moral persuasions. Instead, it rests on laws and a more formal type of sanctioning process. So here you would have legally defined punishments. There would be more formal techniques to keep you in line. Lenski is a little bit more contemporary, and he talks about the sociocultural evolutionary approach. This is also a theory, and he says one of the most important components of sociocultural evolution is a society's level of technology. If you don't have a lot of technology, then you don't have any reason to evolve to a newer or different or better sociocultural place. So for Lenski, there are more than just the two divisions that Durkheim and Tonnies had. Lenski actually has 4 divisions in his theory of sociocultural evolution. He first talks about pre-industrial societies, and these would be akin to Durkheim's mechanical society and to Tonnies' Gemeinschaft. These are hunting and gathering societies or horticultural or agrarian societies where pretty much everybody's got the same kind of tasks every day, and those tasks revolve somewhat around basic survival of the group and of the individual. And so here we don't have a lot of differentiation in these types of societies. People are really at the whim of the elements, and there's not a lot of technology. So here's where Lenski would say this is an example of these type of societies staying in a pre-industrial state because they don't develop technology, or they haven't developed the technology. Do some societies take longer than others to move out of the pre-industrial state? Absolutely. And that depends on their ability to use technology to suit their needs. The second phase for Lenski would be the industrial society. This is where technology's really gotten a good grasp, and the people in that society are able to use technology to their advantage. And so here we have mechanization that can be used to produce goods and services, and we have inventions and energy sources that people can rely heavily on. And so what ends up happening here is the focus of the society changes from a communal effort for survival to a more individualistic approach, because now, rather than relying on the other people in your group to help keep you alive, satisfy your needs, you can rely on technology to do that. So you don't have to have those strong ties. This would also be akin to Durkheim's organic solidarity and Tony's Gesellschaft idea. Now Lenski goes a little bit farther. He talks actually about two more types of societies past the industrial, and he talks about the post-industrial and the postmodern society. So for Lenski, once your society has industrialized, and once industrialization has really taken over and it's become a smooth running machine, you move past a mechanical industrial type of state and you move into a state where you're more engaged in information culling. You gather information, you disseminate information. There are some who would assert that this is where America has been for the past few decades. We are no longer a world power when it comes to the type of mechanical production that used to occur in the early days of the Industrial Revolution. Instead, we've become consumers of products that less developed nations are making cheaper. And so now where we might have had a t-shirt factory or a sneaker plant and produced our own goods and services for ourselves to purchase, we instead now purchase those from other countries that are, if you will, behind us as far as the socio-cultural evolution. And so instead that frees us up. We don't have to depend so much on mechanical invention and technology, and so we become more focused in on processing and controlling information. Primarily the computer. That's how we do it. I would hazard a guess that nearly every one of my students and the people I know spend at least some time every single day on the computer looking at information. And so that's one of the primary characteristics for Lenski of the post-industrial society. And then he also talks about the postmodern society. This is a technologically sophisticated society preoccupied with consumer goods and media images. And I'm going to assert to you, and probably many sociologists today would assert to you, that in the last 15 to maybe 20 years, this is where America has been. We are a postmodern society. Postmodern societies consume goods and consume information on a mass scale. The ways that we communicate with each other today are rapidly changing. So in my opinion, technology, what Lenski says is essential to move us forward, to evolve us forward, has been integral to the United States moving through the post-industrial stage into a postmodern stage. We'll talk again soon. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.